Life kind of does that, doesn't it? You're going along. I look kind of strange in this video. Let's see, let's fix this light. Maybe that's a little better. Life's going along. Everything seems just fine. And guess what? Something happens. All of a sudden things stop. Yet, for example, the next minute, the next hour, the next day, the next week, the next month is going to continue. Yet all of a sudden for us, something stopped. And I think that's very curious. Very, very curious. Because a person at that time when everything stops, now this everything stop can be someone gets very sick and everything has to stop. Now let's take a look at what everything means. Because for those of us who are brass players and we hurt ourselves very badly, what stops? Our gigs for a while? The way our practicing was going on? Does that stop for a while? Do we have to take a leave of absence from a professional situation we're in? Or just make sure no one hears us for a while? Well, we're trying to fit in what we need at our current time versus what the planned out schedule says we should be doing. Now that last example is what happened to me when I hurt my face. A long time ago, 1977. And I was in a situation where I had to keep going. Now, I guess at 22 years old, things were going. I was in the Empire Brass Quintet. I was recording with the Boston Pops. I was in the Boston Symphony and the Boston Pops. I had done a lot of things. I was used to playing a certain way. I was known for playing a certain way. And all of a sudden, my warm-up had to change. Everything had to change in terms of my playing. My whole embouchure had to change. My whole embouchure. Vertical placement, horizontal placement, corner placement. Everything. Now, probably because I was really young, you know, I thought, well, I guess I'm going to have to do something else for a career. And yet there was nothing else I wanted to do. And the things I wanted to do probably wouldn't make any money. And I needed a little bit. Not that I ever thought in those terms, but it was on my mind at a practical level, given current circumstances at that time. And yet, I pick up my horn, and some days have a range of maybe a fifth. And then guess what? That very night would have to play Bolero with the Pops. Could I have handled that at age 42? So timing. This Frequency Bone Summer Music Connection 6 is about timing, and I was having trouble finding out what I should call it, because there's many different topics I want to talk about, but there's one that's really catching me, and that's the dichotomy of organic time, what we need personally, physically, mentally, emotionally, and then there's the time schedule that culturally we're supposed to fit into, like the 7 days of a week, 7 days in a week, and things like that. And 24 hours in a day, and different things we have to do throughout a day. And if you have schooling, then there's certain things you have to accomplish. And then if you have a professional job, there's certain timetables you have to meet. But getting into one of these everything stops situations, and they're usually extreme when that happens, then the consideration shifts. And depending on how severe that is, it's going to be a big shift. And everything else that you were used to doing has to stop. Now, at that particular life, hurting my face the way I did, from way too much playing, oh my gosh, it must have been 12 hours a day. And I was a strong player, and I was fine for a while, but I wasn't using my head. It was more like a noodle, when they say using your noodle. Not a lot of substance to a lot of noodles, and carbohydrates you can burn out really quick if you're not careful. And so my noodle that I was using, even though I was warming up, I was warmed up. But it was so extreme what I was doing, recording in the afternoon with the Empire Brass Quintet, having a rehearsal with the Pops in the morning, recording with the Pops, and then TV shows that night and all this stuff, at the same time doing all this quintet stuff. And the way that I was doing it, I'd record all day long with the quintet. They'd come in and absolutely blow down the walls. No, seriously. I was playing extremely loud. I'd love to try to bury the percussion. I mean, not the most musical-minded things in the world, but when you're 22 and you're kind of having fun and you were into the zeal of it and your ego was into the zeal of it too, let's face it, you can set yourself up for a problem. And that problem, well, that existed for about, it took me 4.5 years to recover, I'd say. But then if I wasn't careful, it's like a sports injury, I could re-injure it, and then it would have to, okay, this is going to be a two or three a week warm up at such a slow pace with so many breaks. And so then I'd have to alter the timing. And be very, very planned. I know many people, if they've hurt themselves, they've taken off in their career. Went on leave, sick leave, or taken off a month or two. I never did. Maybe because it happened when I was so young, but still, maybe I have a good imagination and I'm good at trying different things. And I did, and I never had an embouchure that felt exactly the same way every day. It's much more that way now, believe it or not. But back then it was slightly different, but I knew what to do. So maybe that gave me an edge in order to be able to help myself with this new sense of timing. So, I got off on a personal story, and I think it's an interesting one for everybody to consider. Everybody, the performer and the teacher. The teacher needs to take this into serious consideration when working with a student. You know, at the college level, there's juries. Some places call them promotionals. And someone's supposed to show off what they've learned that year, you know, a test, a final examination. And sometimes the person is going through a lot of different changes, and that needs to be postponed. This has happened many times in my teaching career with people. That doesn't mean they're not going to be okay. It means they need more time than what the academic year is allowing. So academic time, interestingly enough, is based on a human year cycle of 9 months. If you want to think about conception to birth, 9 months, kind of a human year in that way. Planetary year being more 12. And so I think that given today's pressures, the getting away from natural development is even more. Everything's accelerating at such a pace that people need to find out how they can use their time. And that's why when I was talking to my wife, this is kind of a non sequitur, but my wife said, why don't you call your, online summer music camp this summer, making the most out of the time that you have? And I think that's a great title for this summer. Making the most of the time that you have. And that way we can talk about when things are kind of going naturally, normally. And even in that, there's ups and downs, aren't there? Ups and downs. You can't live in this part of creation without having ups and downs. An inhale and an exhale. And you know what? A lot of times, in the world that we're living in so much, is so much taking in, inhale, inhale, inhale. And then we're getting behind, and we're running, we're inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, and we're getting more and more and more and more tired, with less of an ability to be able to process what we need to process. And one of the secrets of that is putting gaps. Don't wait till the vacation. Try to find time in a day where you can leave, where you can vacate the premise of your professional or scholastic duties and have some time for yourself. And deep rest, relaxation techniques, meditation, which I love. Other things that a person might do, it might be in terms of prayer, it might be in terms of getting together with people that they really enjoy. But what's going to be rejuvenating and refreshing? That's a part of time. That is not wasting time. That is making the most out of our time. When you're practicing, you might want to practice for 10 minutes after you're warmed up. Take 5 minutes off. Listen to a piece you love. Listen to some music that inspires you. Listen to some other kind of music that might not even have to do with the genre you're, working on or interested in becoming a professional at. So I hope this is useful. And so I'll tell you, sometimes when I'm getting back in shape, and we can get into this more, and if this provokes questions for people, please write to me and I'll answer them. right here on Frequency Bone Summer Music Connection 6. But a lot of times, these days, in fact, I'll tell you something that happened this year. I was at a store, and I was going to take some of the 24 bottle package of Poland Springs water, and it was kind of high, but I thought I had a good grip, you know. So I went for it and fell right into my chops. Oh, that knocked. I mean, I got really dizzy. I immediately felt this whole thing inside my lip split wide open. My lip went and just, you know, looked like a beak. And, you know, it maybe went down. There's still some scarring there. Maybe it went down in a month or more. And I kind of packed it and stuff. Then I started to play extremely slowly. And I didn't have, you know, playing engagements, so that was useful. And I actually had to turn several down. But I've just been letting myself naturally kind of easily get back. Easily get back. And I've learned a lot from that about getting back easily. Well, when I totally hurt my chops another time, 1977, you know, it was a totally different mindset. I never laid off. Now, I had to lay off for that because my lip was split wide open about that much. Really. And it was, you know, so I had to lay off. I kind of would pretend I'd play and put the mouthpiece up and kind of just feel the corners a little bit, but always with air going through them, just to feel a little, you know, contact. And then when I got back, when I said, yeah, I got to try to play again, it was more like glisses like that. I find glisses very, very relaxing, especially downward glisses, because you can let things relax. You don't, you're holding, but there's a slight relaxation in that. And so I find them very therapeutic. As a matter of fact, I think when people hurt themselves in different places, if you cut your lip wide open in the red part, you're going to have to lay off. But if it's something in here and other things, like my first injury was all through here and in the corner, you don't always actually have to lay off the horn. Physical therapists are not used to working with a brass player in the sense that they're not brass players themselves, and they have not figured out what therapeutic playing is. But there is therapeutic playing, and maybe that's something we can get into this summer even more. So, organic time, man-made schedules, sometimes they coexist, sometimes they don't. Are you patient enough to do that kind of thing? for a year.